Picture ancient Egypt, roughly 5,000 years ago. A pharaoh sits on his throne, and rising directly off his forehead, carved in gold, is a cobra, hood flared, ready to strike, positioned exactly where an attacker's first strike would land. This wasn't decoration. Egyptians believed that symbol was a literal weapon, a divine protector who would spit fire and venom at anyone who threatened the king, mounted permanently on his crown for exactly that purpose. Now travel forward a few thousand years and a few thousand miles to a stone temple in southern India, where officials stand outside a sealed underground vault they've refused to open for over a century, because they believe, seriously, that a massive cobra is coiled in the dark on the other side, guarding a fortune in gold. Two completely different civilizations, thousands of years and thousands of miles apart. And somehow, both of them landed on the exact same idea, that a cobra was the right creature to guard the things that mattered most. This is the story of how one of the most feared animals on Earth became one of the most trusted, and how, underground, that same fear was quietly doing a very different, very real job. In ancient Egypt, that golden cobra had a name, Wadjet. She was one of Egypt's oldest deities, worshipped as far back as the very beginning of Egyptian civilization, centered around the city of Wadjet in the Nile Delta, a place so closely tied to her that the Greeks later renamed it Buto after her cult. Wadjet wasn't a minor background figure in Egyptian religion. She was specifically the protector of Lower Egypt, and once Egypt unified, she became one of the two patron goddesses of the entire pharaoh, paired permanently with Nekhbet, the vulture goddess of Upper Egypt. Together, the cobra and the vulture represented the whole of Egypt, united under one ruler. Her most iconic form was the uraeus, the rearing cobra symbol mounted on the front of the pharaoh's crown, hood flared and poised to strike. Egyptians didn't treat this as symbolic flair. They believed Wadjet, embodied in that golden cobra, would physically defend the pharaoh by spitting fire or venom at any enemy who approached, striking before a blade or arrow ever could. It's one of the reasons the uraeus appears on crown after crown, statue after statue, across 3,000 years of Egyptian history, largely unchanged. It wasn't fashion, it was believed protection, renewed with every new ruler who put it on. Wadjet protected the pharaoh in life, carved in gold on his crown. But Egyptians also spent enormous effort protecting him in death, sealing him inside a tomb, deep underground, packed with enough gold to tempt anyone desperate or greedy enough to try breaking in. And for that job, they didn't just rely on symbolism. They relied, whether deliberately or not, on real animals already doing the work for them. Egyptian tombs, especially the deep shaft tombs and pyramid interiors of the Valley of the Kings, were dark, enclosed, temperature-stable spaces cut into rock or built from stone, which happens to be exactly the kind of environment Egyptian cobras and several species of scorpion naturally prefer. These weren't animals placed there as some kind of intentional booby trap in the way you'd see in an adventure movie. They were simply drawn in on their own, over months and years, into an undisturbed, sheltered space, and they stayed, because nothing was coming along to clear them out. For a tomb robber, that meant breaking into a tight, pitch-black passage, often on hands and knees, with no idea what was sharing that space with them. Egyptian cobras deliver a highly potent neurotoxic venom, capable of killing a grown adult, and several scorpion species found in the region, including the notorious deathstalker, rank among the most dangerous scorpions on Earth. Encountering either in total darkness, in a confined stone passage, with no quick way out, was a very real, very physical deterrent, arguably a far more consistent one than any human guard, who could be bribed, threatened, or simply not show up for his shift. Archaeologists examining looted tombs across Egyptian history have found exactly the pattern you'd expect if this deterrent worked as well as it should have. Many robberies appear to have happened either immediately after a burial, before wildlife had time to move in and settle, or centuries later, after the passages had long since been cleared, resealed, or reused. The tombs that stayed most intact the longest tended to be the ones left most thoroughly undisturbed and sealed, exactly the conditions that let dangerous wildlife move in and stay. Wadjet wasn't chosen by accident, and neither, centuries later and thousands of miles away, was the guardian cobra of that sealed Indian temple vault. Across multiple, unconnected civilizations, cobras kept getting handed the exact same job, guardian of the things people couldn't afford to lose. Part of it is simply practical. Cobras are fast, genuinely dangerous, highly territorial, and in Egypt and India alike, they're an animal every single person, from a farmer to a pharaoh, already feared without needing convincing. A guardian only works if the threat behind it is real, and nobody had to invent the danger of a cobra. It already existed, all around them, in daily life, and as it turns out, in their tombs as well. But there's a deeper pattern too. In both cultures, independently, the cobra became associated not just with danger, but with the boundary between the world above ground and something hidden and sacred below it. The underworld, buried wealth, or in Wadjet's case, the protection of a divine ruler's very body. A snake, low to the ground, able to vanish into cracks in the earth and reappear without warning, fit that role in a way almost no other animal could. It was a creature that seemed to belong to both worlds at once, which made it just as believable as a real-world hazard in a tomb as it was as a divine protector on a crown. Thousands of years after Wadjet first appeared on a pharaoh's crown, that same instinct, cobra as sacred guardian, was still shaping real decisions on the other side of the world, in a way that's still playing out today. In 2011, at the Sri Padmanabhaswamy Temple in Kerala, India, a Supreme Court ordered inventory uncovered one of the largest treasure hoards ever documented in a single location. Gold coins, jeweled crowns, a solid gold statue of Vishnu studded with hundreds of diamonds, all sealed for generations in a set of underground vaults beneath the temple. 5 of the 6 vaults were opened and catalogued, and the value of just those 5 came out to more than $22 billion. The 6th vault, known as Vault B, has never been opened. Officially, there are practical reasons, an unusual door mechanism, concerns about structural safety. But locally, including among former temple officials, the real reason is a belief that a massive cobra guards that specific chamber, and that disturbing it would bring serious misfortune. The temple itself is dedicated to Vishnu depicted reclining on the coils of a giant serpent, and in Hindu tradition, serpents, or nagas, are closely tied to hidden wealth and the underworld. Practically the same symbolic role Wadjet held for Egyptian royalty, arrived at completely independently, thousands of miles and thousands of years apart. More than a decade after the inventory, Vault B remains sealed. Here's what ties all 3 of these stories together in a way that goes beyond coincidence. In every case, the fear itself did real, measurable work, whether or not anyone intended it to. In Egypt, the uraeus wasn't just religious decoration. It was standard equipment on the crown of essentially every pharaoh for millennia, a psychological and spiritual first line of defense that rulers considered non-negotiable, right alongside their armies and guards. Underground, actual venomous animals reinforced that same symbolism with real, physical danger, whether the builders planned it that way or simply benefited from it. And in India, the belief in a guardian cobra has functioned, quite literally, as one of the most effective security systems ever deployed. Not a single guard, camera, or modern lock has been necessary to keep Vault B untouched for over 100 years. The story alone has done the job. Some historians argue this isn't really mystical at all, that ancient builders across multiple, unrelated cultures understood something very practical. A real, venomous, territorial animal living undisturbed in a dark space is a genuinely effective deterrent. No wages required, no loyalty needed, enforcing itself indefinitely. The religious and mythological framing may have grown up around that practical reality afterward, generation by generation, until the symbol became just as powerful as the animal itself. 2 civilizations, separated by thousands of miles and thousands of years, with no contact and no shared source, looked at the same animal and reached the same conclusion, that nothing else made a better guardian than a cobra. Not a lion, not a soldier, a snake, coiled and waiting, feared enough that the fear itself became the lock, sometimes worn as a golden symbol of divine protection, and sometimes, quite literally, curled in the dark exactly where it needed to be. One civilization put that idea on a crown, protecting the most powerful person in Egypt, above ground and below it. The other sealed it into a stone vault, and it's still working exactly as intended over a century later. If you like this one, there are more stories just like it. Animals who ended up shaping belief, protecting power, and quietly running through human history in ways most people never learn about. Subscribe if you want the next one.